All right. So, week 4. So, what happened tonight was I tried Collaborate. I got on there at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, which apparently is not a good time. So, nobody else was out there. If you showed up a little bit after, anyway, I went ahead and started at 5, but then about 5 minutes into it, I kind of made an executive decision to we'll skip the Tuesday night at 5 o'clock because that doesn't seem to be a good time for most folks. And I realize a lot of folks are just getting off work and other stuff. I had other commitments later on Tuesday that I can't do it any later than that. So I think if we go with Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, that'll be the new Collaborate time. And I'll put it out in an announcement. But anyway, it'll be better, especially as we get closer to the exam. If somebody's got questions about stuff, it'll just be more interactive to have a better time for Collaborate. So Tuesday night, I didn't really get any feedback other than the fact that folks are apparently not available. So chapter 5, what we're going to talk about is financial services, savings plans, payments accounts. All this stuff with kind of cash management, it's kind of a necessary evil. You do not want to keep a bunch of money in just cash sitting around. And basically, if you've got it in savings accounts and money markets and CDs, it's pretty much just sitting around because the interest rates that you're earning they're not keeping up with inflation. Basically, you're losing. So you're not losing money. You put $100 in there and you'll get 1% interest, and you'll have $101. But if inflation, let's say, is 2-3%, that $101 will only buy like $98 worth of stuff. So inflation is pretty insidious. Plus, any money you do earn an interest, it's taxable for the most part. Other than tax exempt bonds, but we've already talked about tax exempt bonds and things like that. That low interest rate, now we're talking down to like 0.5%. The interest paid on a tax exempt investment is reflective of that tax benefit you're getting. So the interest rate in a competitive market is going to be lower. They don't have to pay as much because there's more people who are willing to glom onto it because it's tax free in certain cases. So you have to do an evaluation. You have to know your tax bracket. You have to look at it. So do all that. We're going to look at all these different factors here, comparing financial institutions, comparing the costs, do all that kind of stuff. The homework for this week will be a comparison where you'll actually look at banks and make this comparison on your own. So we'll get to that. Banks, Savings Loan Association, there used to be these distinct differences between them all, and now there's been a lot of deregulation and just competitive forces where now they pretty much all do the same thing to a certain extent. I mean, you may come upon something where, we're a credit union, we can't do whatever. Sometimes it has to do with wire transfers they have troubles with or something else. But again, that might just be a branch issue and maybe not just a characteristic of credit unions. Credit unions are structured a little differently. You own shares versus a bank, but the bottom line is you as a consumer, most of that stuff's transparent, and you're going to go with what's most convenient and also what charges you the least amount of fees. In terms of earning interest from these types of institutions, the interest is not that great. You may jump onto one institution because they've got a competitive thing for a car loan or something like that. But again, be careful with car loans. We'll talk more about that in later classes. But if you're getting something for zero interest, well, it's probably reflected in the price. A lot of times, cars will be whatever price if you use the 0% interest. Well, so it's not 0% interest because you're actually paying for that lower price. So it gets confusing. Anyway, cash management strategies, account services, mortgages, car loans, reward programs. We'll talk a little bit on all that. So, common. Let me see if I can move this thing down just a little bit. Nope, I didn't want to do it. We'll go back one. Anyway, common mistakes in managing cash: overspending. Abusing your credit cards, not having enough liquid assets. A lot of times, though, people have too much. They have idle cash sitting around that should be invested. Ideally, if it was my money, it'd be, in some sort of mutual fund stock market type thing or in housing, something like that you can enjoy. But just having idle cash sitting around earning 1% or actually losing money is not what you want to do. You want to be able to meet your needs, and you want to have money if you need to get at it. But if you, you know, have a strategy where you don't have thousands of dollars sitting in a checking account, that's what you're looking for. So failure to put funds in an interest earning savings account investment plan, I would go with the latter, some sort of investment plan. Savings account, and we're talking down to 1%. So anyway, I've already alluded to my personal strategy. Keep the minimum amount of money in there. And again, it's all integrated, you know. The beauty of having credit cards is, number one, keep them paid off, and then that money, that balance on there, or that available credit can be used to get you through some of those scrapes. So as long as you pay them off, you do not want to carry a balance on credit cards. I'm not advocating that. Types of services, so savings, payment services, borrowing, short and long term, other financial services. So different ways of doing that, and we'll go through all of these. A trust is a unique kind of setup, you know, for somebody who's maybe very old and not really sound mind. They may have their money put in a trust, or somebody may pass away and money goes in a trust, or you may have a child that's, you know, not of legal age, so their money would go in a trust. But it's usually, you know, your money's being taken care of by another party, just as they say. Asset management account. I use asset management accounts. It's similar to a savings account, but it's usually associated with a, you know, some sort of mutual fund company or stockbroker or whatever. And it's a place to sort of park money. You know, when you buy stock, well, you don't necessarily write them a check, because the check would have to clear and the stock price is going to change. That's awkward. Or when they sell stock, they don't want to write you a check. They'll deposit it into your asset management account or your money market account or whatever you have. And it will earn some interest, but again, not enough to be competitive. It's not really an investment type thing. It's a place where you're parking your money. Let's say today somebody gave you $100,000. Do you want to go dump it all in the stock market? Stock market's pretty high right now. That'd be kind of risky. I might put it in an asset management account and then ease into the stock market. Or potentially me, I'm a little more aggressive. I would wait for a correction in the stock market and then jump in when the stock market goes down. Because the stock market, although it does go up, over the long term, it's got a lot of volatility. So, and that's a gross generalization. Depends on the stocks and how you do things. There's some very stable things, and there's some very high beta type stocks, high volatility type stocks. So each to his own. But anyway, asset management account is usually a place to sort of park your money. Online banking. These guys, they're, you know, the book is getting a bit outdated because, first off, most companies, most banks certainly within Alaska or anywhere now, they have both an online and a you know, brick and mortar kind of presence. So you have the benefits of both ways. And some of the, you know, reasons for not having an online bank, like problems with ATMs. Well, I have a bank in Texas, and if I use an ATM anywhere, they refund the ATM fee to me, regardless of network or any of that. So it's actually better than some of the banks up here, where you have to, you know, chase down and find the correct network to not get zapped with a fee. Also, you know, depositing checks was always a problem with online banks until they accept deposits now with a smartphone. You know, you take a picture of the check and bang, it's in there quicker than going to the local bank. So anyway, it's a challenge for local banks because they do need to remain competitive. Now, still, people do like to walk into those banks and like to do some sort of transfers or have business accounts locally that I deal with those folks locally because that's just how they do it. Haven't really found a good online business bank at this point, but anyway, you know, so much of this can be done. And in terms of fraud protection, though, I wouldn't necessarily say that online banking is safer. You know, there's scams on anyway. The guys out there scamming are coming up with new and innovative ways at all times for any type of transaction, whether it be online or at a physical bank. So these concerns, privacy and security, you used to have those anywhere. ATM fees, like I said, I don't have those. The difficulty depositing checks. Cash is still kind of an issue. That is, but again, I don't come across huge chunks of cash. I don't deal in drugs or any of that kind of stuff, so I'm not really one of those people with tens of thousands of dollars in my pocket. Overspending potential. You can overspend. You can write bad checks just as easily. That's been around a lot longer than online banking. And online scams and phishing emails, you have to be aware on anything, especially as a UA student. You know how often you have phishing attempts. So again, fraud is out there in every case. Opportunity costs of financial services. Again, really cash accounts, it's more like a damage control type thing. What you want to do is it's a necessary evil. You need cash accounts, checking accounts, whatever, to pay your bills, to do the day-to-day business. But you're not going to be making money in cash accounts. You want to minimize the fees that you're being charged. So again, some of these no-fee checking accounts, if you got to keep $500 in there, as the example shows, now 6% interest, that'd be nice to get, but people aren't currently getting that much now. But anyway, $400 over 10 years is what you'd be losing by that first $500 not earning interest. Interest rates, a lot of the information we'll discuss tonight, it could change at some point, but keep in mind as interest rates being paid go up, that's because inflation goes up. So they kind of go up in tandem. Basically, what you want to do, again, is not keep a lot of idle cash sitting, obviously, in your pocket, in your gun safe, whatever, or sitting in a low-yielding account. You want to get out and find something better to do with that in terms of investment, or even if you invested in your home, that's better. Now, I don't want to say that you don't need a source of liquid funds to cover emergencies, but once those bases are covered, invest the rest. In terms of periodicals, they don't mention Barron's on here. I do like Barron's in terms of print articles. It's like a weekly type thing, so it's not quite as overwhelming as compared to Wall Street Journal. It comes out every day, and it's got just stats. Anyway, most people aren't even dealing with print journalism so much anymore. If you're going to go on TV, Fox Business Network with Cavuto, he's good. There's other things too out there, but people may or may not like Fox, but in terms of politics, but on the financial stuff, I do like Cavuto, and his usually pretty topical. So before we get involved in the different vehicles out there, I did just a quick survey last night, online to see what the rate's going, and this is nationwide. So what this thing shows is national, and also for certain terms, to get the better interest rate, better being 1.85, which is nothing to be excited about. But anyway, you needed $5,000, and you needed to keep it in there 4 years, and that would get you a whopping 1.85. That's not quite what inflation is. So you're losing money, and this is the best one. So that is that's going to be a certificate of deposit for 4 years. So here's a savings account, 0.95. So the nature of savings accounts, again, national. They did have a minimum on this one of $5,000, but $1 here for this part. But the best rate they could get was still at 0.95. Anyway, no time limit associated though with the savings account. You can pull that money out whenever you like it, but less than 1%. Here's the CD, which we already talked about. Money market account, slightly better. There's less money market accounts. You typically don't move as much money. There are usually limitations in terms of how many checks you could write per month, or other limitations on that. But 1.02%. Here's a high yield checking account, 0.76. So you're definitely losing versus inflation. Municipal bonds, 0.5. Okay, again, that isn't taxable. Keep in mind all those other ones where you're making that 1%, you weren't even making that 1% because that 1%, you're going to get a 1099 INT at the end of the year, a tax statement. You're going to have to pay taxes on that income. So it just gets worse. And you don't get any credit for inflation because inflation it's just out there. It just destroys the buying power. It doesn't actually take away your money per se. So it's a bad situation. You need to do better than that. So to illustrate, the effect of inflation, you can see we had 2009, we're in a recession. It was actually only at 0.1, but by and large, as high as 4 in recent past, 2%. I mean, we've seen inflation rates double digit before, but savings yields were much higher then. But if you go with a 2 to 3% inflation rate, you can see that none of those investments through some of these cash management systems are delivering that. You're not going to get the yields you're looking for. Now, this looks pretty impressive, but it can be dangerous. You need to. This is just Dow Jones. So there's stock market's a big thing. Dow Jones Industrial is just an amalgamation of some different stocks. But you look at these numbers, and sometimes they're getting 33, and there's a 26, but there's also a negative 33 in there in 2008. So on average, 8-10% on average is probably what you would get on all these numbers when you add them up. But and stocks are liquid. You can sell stocks quite easily whenever you need to, but do you want to? So anyway, once you start putting money into the stock market, it should be money that's not needed for emergency. So we aren't talking about stocks tonight, but I just wanted to show you just a comparative type thing that the amount of interest that is available through the stock market, but also the problem if you put money that you're going to need for some sort of emergency fund in the stock market, and let's say you put $100,000 in 2007, and then something bad happened in 2008, you need to pull it out. You just lost. Your $100,000 now turned into $67,000. You lost nearly $34,000. Now the thing is, when people say I lost money in the stock market, did you sell that day? If you didn't sell, you didn't lose. So if somebody wrote that 2008 out, they didn't sell anything, then they're just fine, and then they're back up to 18% the next year. So the only time you get hurt in the stock market is when you sell. In fact, the smart money would hopefully have some money on the sidelines, maybe in a money market account, waiting for a dip in the market, and when it happens, they jump in. It's hard to catch a falling knife, it's hard to tell when the bottom's going to happen, but sometimes you can. But anyway, in terms of retirement savings, I'm not saying you have to go all in the stock market, but you do need to get in something that's going to be earning a rate of return that's going to generate wealth for you. Okay, so back to the boring stuff, the actual cash management stuff, and I don't mean boring in a bad way. I mean it's a necessity. You need to have these institutions to satisfy your day-to-day transactions, but again, not a place to park large sums of cash. And hopefully you'll get to a point where you're amassing some retirement type savings. You do not want them in checking or even savings accounts. So this whole blur between commercial banks and savings and loan, there used to be distinct bright lines in between what they could and couldn't do, and that's all changed. So when you do your comparison, in terms of what kind of institution you're going to use for cash management for the homework, you've got the wide range, credit unions to savings and loans to regular banks. And you can find them all here, but try and find a difference for the type of transactions you make, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find very many differences. It really comes down to fees, convenience, and who you prefer working with. Mutual savings banks, do I care that it's owned by the depositors? It doesn't really make a huge difference to me. Credit unions, user-owned, you know, again, it just sort of functions like a bank, although they call me a shareholder. That's, you know, not really why I'm there. It's just a different structural type thing. Life insurance companies, in terms of financial institutions, I tend to, buy life insurance for life insurance. I tend not to do investments through life insurance. I tend to go with investment companies, that next list down there. So, mutual funds and companies that specialize in investments, rather than life insurance companies. A lot of times life insurance companies, you involve salesmen who need to be paid, you involve loads that need to be paid, and life insurance is, well, long story short, most likely what you're going to be searching for is term life insurance that covers a specific need at a certain point in your life, and not trying to generate wealth at some future point. Life insurance is not for the old folks. You should have a nest egg and be basically self-insured in terms of life insurance. In the $1 million life insurance policy, you got to die to cash it. Whereas if you got that same amount of money and you put it in investments, you would still have that $1 million, but it would be there while you're still here. So anyway, philosophically, it's I'm much more into the investment companies. These other things, finance companies, thankfully a lot of these guys have kind of disappeared. Companies that are out there that just do, loans, but usually at higher rates, and that's the case. And it's kind of a institution of last resort for a lot of people. They need a loan for something, and they're, it's almost like putting it on a credit card. You're going to be paying those kind of rates. So mortgage companies are vital service. I still have an Alaska real estate salesperson's license, and mortgage companies, especially local ones, provide a real niche. But I would not necessarily say they're financial institutions, because really what they do is they're kind of document assembly companies that review your credit. They do the initial loan, but next time you get a loan from whoever, if you don't get a note from usually Wells Fargo within a month or two saying your loan has been sold to them, I'd be surprised. So mortgage companies usually don't carry the financing to term. They usually assemble all the paperwork, make sure the sale goes through, and they're good. They provide a vital service to do all the credit checks and do all that stuff, get you the best rate and do all that stuff. But then they consolidate that loan and they sell it off to one of the big boys, usually Wells Fargo in most cases here. So pawn shops, they're not a financial institution. Again, kind of a last resort thing. Don't do it. If you are doing it, something's gone wrong, and try and get out of that situation. And check cashing outlets. This stuff just gets crazy. Where I used to work in an environment where there was a whole bunch of guys came right up from Mexico and were working out in the fields. They didn't have IDs, so they'd have to go into these places, and they'd go to these mini marts, and they'd have to spend about 3/4 of the check buying all their groceries and stuff in order for that market to cash their check. They'd make them spend 3/4 of the check in that store, so they're paying $6-8 for a box of cereal. So anyway, any of these things, find someplace else. Go to your regular bank to cash your check, and wait those extra couple days to payday and get that done. Unless, of course, all this stuff is out the window. If your kid's got a medical emergency, you're going to do what you need to do. But if it's to get drinking or vacation money, don't do that. So anyway, choosing a financial institution step by step. You're going to go through and you're going to do all the research, and that's going to be part of the homework assignment. So we'll cover that a bit later. Regular savings account, I don't do it. I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with them, but I don't keep much money in them because there's not much they can do for you. They usually set them up when you set up a checking account someplace, and if you want to keep $40-50 in there or something like that. But in terms of a savings account, I just don't see much utility for them. I prefer I have like a savings account. What does that function would be a asset management account or a money market account associated with the brokerage or the mutual fund companies I deal with. So you saw the interest rates down around 1%. Certificates of deposit, again, just slightly better rates, and you got to leave the money in there for a certain time, or else you pay a penalty. So, in most cases, not a big fan. But again, shop around for the interest rate. But again, it's a place to park your money. But with a certificate of deposit, you lose that liquidity unless you want to get some sort of penalty associated with it. So, again, if equities or real estate or bonds or something like that, those are investments. But CDs, the interest rates just aren't enough. And believe me, in mutual funds, you can go from ultra conservative, low interest kind of things, but low, maybe being double what these guys get, to highly speculative ones. I'm not really seeing either one of those two extremes. Something more in the middle, that's tempered to your whether you're risk averse or kind of more aggressive. In terms of a flow chart, this is kind of how it goes. Regular savings account, so low rate of return there on the regular savings account. Money markets, typically does have a higher balance. Not assured. So again, banks do have an insurance, and obviously with money in stock market, money market, that stuff is not insured. So again, are banks going to fail? They could, but I'm not too worried about it. Savings bond, those make great gifts for nephews and kids and stuff, but in terms of investment, not so much. Identify the factors used to evaluate savings plans. So it's really the yield, and then also the compounding period. The compounding has to do with when that interest is accrued. So if they give it to you annually, well, that's not so good. But if it's compounded daily, that's better. So if you're earning a certain percentage, it's always going to be calculated at an annual rate. But if they give you that little percentage each day, then at the end of the year, your $100 will be worth more. Let's say you're getting 5% on a compounded annually, you'd have 105, right? If it's compounded daily, by giving it to you in those little incremental steps throughout the year, you might have 106. So it does make a difference. And the bigger money you're talking about, the bigger difference it makes. So how they do an APY, annual percentage yield, interest divided by the principal. So here they're using that 5% APY. Interest on a $60 principal of $1,200. So anyway, they do the calculation. Truth in savings, all the disclosures. Again, these things are, they're kind of like the computer statements where accept, consent, whatever, where you just sort of check the block. But there are a lot of documents that need to be given to you, and they do try to keep it standardized in terms of the interest rate or the annual percentage yield. So look for those numbers, the annual percentage yield, when you're making comparisons to make sure that they're valid comparisons. We already did this comparison to the inflation rate, and you can see on most of these cash type investments, the inflation rate is killing you. It's eating your lunch. You will pay taxes on any interest earned, not withhold. You'll just get this little note. It'll either be a 1099 DIV, which is dividend one, if you've got investments like that generate dividends, or a 1099 INT. Anyway, that's income. It goes on your tax statement, and depending on your tax bracket, it depends on the attractiveness. So liquidity means that you can sell right now. Now, if it's in the stock market, it's very liquid, but there's also a time factor because the stock market's volatile. So you may not want to sell. Real estate generally is looked at as illiquid investments because there is a lot of inertia to get stuff sold and closing costs and the financing, and that's not liquid. Again, the market fluctuations do go into that. FDIC, insuring certain savings accounts. But check on that if that's important to you, you know. But again, I know I'm going to lose money if I put it in a savings account with inflation. I will endure a bit of risk in other investments. Restrictions and the rest of that. Sometimes they have toasters and rifles and stuff they'll give you, but there's usually restrictions. After-tax savings rate, we had a homework problem on this last week. So for people who had any trouble trying to figure that out, a lot of times you use a 28% tax rate, marginal tax rate up there at the maybe the $80,000 to $100,000 range, and so you get a true rate. So what looked like 6% interest, when you look at your tax rate, is only 4.32. So that's where the taxes eat into it. And of that 4.32, let's say inflation's 2%. So now, you went from thinking you're making 6% on your money to where now you're just about 2%. 2% into 72 is a lot, like 36 years before your money would double. Compare the methods, benefits, different types of accounts. So debit cards, online payments, store value cards, smart cards. They also, I had to order an iPhone 6 yesterday. I'm switching to Verizon, and it's a requirement to get the 6 for their network. So anyway, all these different accounts are now available. The 6 has got some sort of token type thing that's more secure than using your actual credit card. But I'll probably still use credit card because I want the miles. So there you go. The store value cards, though, I'm not a big advocate of those because if you lose them, you lost them. You lose a debit card, and that's an agreement with the bank, but you can, usually recover any fraudulent use. But a store value card, a gift card, when it's gone, it's gone. Smart cards, that's a sort of a generic term, but different cards have different values associated with them, prepaid, Visa card type things, but there's no credit there. It's just a prepaid card. So, and then you got PayPal when you're getting into some of the not investments, but buying thing on eBay or dealing with somebody remotely. PayPal's a different way of doing it that I use a fair amount for eBay-ish kind of stuff. Types of checking accounts. You got all these different names, and they're all kind of buzzwords, and each bank will have their own name for it, so pay attention. A lot of times, though, just if you're paying a fee for your checking account, you're probably doing something wrong. I'm not the type of person that writes a lot of checks either. Most of the checks that I write, I really don't write. I have an automatic payment system with the bank, and if I have to write somebody a check, it'll come in the mail from my bank. So that's how I deal with stuff, and it just makes things easier and leaves a bit of record. So anyway, look at the different accounts. There's different charges. And we've already talked about, if it's an interest-bearing account, if you have to keep a balance in there's an opportunity cost with that. So a lot of marketing involved in what checking accounts go for. But the competitive pressure is such that if you're getting ripped off, you need to switch banks. Evaluating checking accounts, restrictions, fees, interest rates, special services, overdraft. If you are going to have a bank, you probably want to have a credit card with that bank as well. You don't even have to use the credit card. Put it in a drawer or something so you don't lose it or there's no fraud with it. But if you happen to overdraft a check, it will go on the credit card if you have it set up as such, rather than get hit with a overdraft charge, a check. I mean, you're breaking the law if you truly overdraft, write a hot check. So you don't want to be in that situation, and there's errors that happen. So for most checking accounts, any checking account I would have a credit card associated with it that would have that overdraft. Managing your checking account, deposit tickets, things like that, carbon checks, but then you start using a debit card, and there is no record for that other than online. So you really have to be careful with this. Sometimes they have photo deposits, where you can mail in the checks. If you are going to do any kind of check type thing where you're dropping it off or you're mailing it, where you do something like that, even the photo ones, you write on the back, and for deposit only, such and such account. That way, it ends up in the proper account, and it really decreases the amount of fraud that can take place. Also, most companies, they don't want to deal with paper checks, so direct deposit is kind of the norm, and automatic bill pay is kind of the norm as well. So, like I say, I don't like checks, don't deal with them. It's kind of an event. Record the date, write the name, how to write a check. I actually have to think about writing a check when I have to do it, because I write maybe 5, 6 a year. So sometimes you need them. Sometimes, like I say, I like to use credit cards or debit cards, but merchants, I as a merchant, I have a card reader and the whole bit, and I'll get charged like 3%. So if somebody wants to pay me cash, I'll pay my, I'll be very happy to do that. Throat's starting to go. Reconciling your account, right? You have to make sure everything's going on. But again, if you're doing this online, and again, my account's online, I can actually see a small little, snapshot of the check, a photocopy of the check online. So it makes it much easier to keep track of it. But reconciling a checking account when you're using a debit card frequently makes it very difficult, because a debit card comes, straight out of your checking account, which will confuse you if you aren't keeping very good track of it. Certified checks, cashier's checks. Like I say, I use the check service from the bank itself. Is it the same as certified check or cashier's check? Not necessarily, but vendors or companies I deal with treat it as such. But if you're buying, a big item and there's problems with checks, you have to go this route. Here in Alaska, fortunately, we don't have, well, at least I've never had any problems for anything I've in my business. I've never had a bad check yet. So other places, most places won't take checks. You go to some place like Las Vegas or someplace kind of dodgy, checks are almost worthless because folks won't take them. And you need to go to something like this, but even that, they probably still would want to do a wire transfer. Money orders, yeah, I mean, you can buy these things at Walmart or wherever else, sometimes if they're required, but there's so many other things. If you're buying something online and a person wants a money order, they're probably a scam artist. If they don't do PayPal, then that's kind of a red flag. Traveler's checks. I've been overseas in numerous locations and seen more problems with traveler's checks than I have with credit cards. I don't deal with traveler's checks. I just see them as more of a hassle than they're worth. So I've always used credit cards internationally and not had any problems. That being said, if you are going to do any traveling, call the bank first, depending on the card. But I had to go to Munich this summer, and Alaska Airlines card didn't work for a bit. I had to call them. But my other bank worked just fine. So anyway, they're looking for fraud. They act like they're in it to protect you, but to tell you the truth, they're on the hook for any fraud that takes place on a credit card. On a debit card, it's up to the bank agreement. But you do want to let them know that you're going to be doing some erratic travel or traveling to a foreign destination or whatever, so that they don't inadvertently think there's fraud and cancel your card out from under you, and then you got to deal with international phone systems to get it all fixed. So, word of the wise. But traveler's checks, I don't deal with it. So for this homework, this is really what we're looking at. Find 3 world banking checking options for your situation. So whether, again, this might be a good time to explore and see if a credit union or a traditional bank or savings and loan type thing or whatever. Also consider the online type stuff if it'll fit your needs. Again, some of the reasons you may not have gone online because of difficulty, depositing checks, it's now easier online to do it with a smartphone. Even though I have a local bank, I'd rather do it via the phone and be done with it right then. Monthly fees, if you're paying fees, might be a time to switch banks. If you're earning interest, really check and see how much that interest is and see whether it's worth it to maintain it. The ATM fees, again, if you're paying fees, might be a time to switch banks. Debit cards, like I say, those are determined by the bank themselves in terms of what they do in fraud. And I've got a great bank. They treat them just like credit cards, and I've had more fraud done on my debit cards, and they've always taken care of it. Now, I don't let it go. I mean, you've got to be pretty diligent and check your statements, or if you're missing your card, you know, kind of assume it's lost, call them, they get you a new one, and then when you find it, you just throw away the old one. But, you know, their patience with you will be in direct proportion to timely notification. So, overdraft avoidance procedures, you know, what do they do? It may happen. I had a refund from a insurance company. It was $500-600. Deposited in my account, wrote a check on it, and then I found out they voided the check afterwards. The company did. No fault of my own, but I ended up with overdraft charges. They ended up paying for them because I raised kind of a stink about it. But anyway, it can happen to completely honest people. Convenience, you know, are they in the grocery stores by your house? That might be one of the factors. Other factors consider relevance, so other things that are important to you. And this definitely may be, I want to deal with an Alaskan bank. If I have a problem, I want to go in and see somebody face to face. By necessity, being in the military, being overseas, I needed an online bank, so I'm used to it. But anyway, you're going to write up that whole thing and your criteria, and that's going to be your homework assignment for this week. So, okay, so back to next week in terms of collaboration. I think it is useful to pursue that. I think, you know, the evidence is in that Tuesday nights at 5 o'clock are not good. So I'll put it on an announcement. We'll try Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and we'll see if we works out better for folks. All right, and that's it. So I'll put this online.